Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the panel discussion this morning. We've had two fantastic presentations this morning looking at innovation, looking at design, looking at the future. And this panel discussion is very much going to focus on that same topic. We're going to be looking at hospitality right now, what's going to happen in the future, and what are the trends and the innovations, even though Himank has mentioned that word more often than anyone. What are the innovations that are going to be happening within this industry? So we're going to cover three main topics today. We're going to look at technology, we're going to look at design, and also service. These three things are really going to be changing when it comes to our industry moving forward. We've already seen significant advances in all three of these aspects over the last 5 to 10 years. And with the advances, particularly in technology, we see this is going to evolve even quicker. So I'm going to ask this question, the first one to kick off to all three of you. And it's looking at technology and the disruption that we're seeing, particularly from the likes of Airbnb, Booking.com, TripAdvisor, on how guests are booking, searching, investigating, and ultimately coming and staying in the hotels. So particularly, I'll ask this one to Chris first to start off with. Are hotels keeping up to date with technology, or are we simply still just far behind what's happening further out in the industry?
The industry has historically been always behind any other industry in terms of technology because it was so people-oriented as being in hospitality that we forgot to look at the future. So we constantly tried to actually do the basic service and operations in a hotel well and wait for technology to be tested, tried, before we adopted it. And when we adopted some technology, most of the time, as you were saying, it was a technology that was actually not working properly. It was creating dissatisfaction. It was too complex. If you remember the first digital type of IP phones that we used to have in the rooms, completely useless. And what's happening today is that we keep adding gadgets, but those gadgets are not working properly. You're always behind what your guests have at home actually and are using. So I think before going into gadgets in the rooms for enhanced guest experience in that sense, the key for us is to invest in technology that will make the overall guest experience more enjoyable and more personalized. And for me, the most important investment that we should be making as an industry is in our CRM platforms. Today, I find it absolutely amazing that you've been staying in the same chain, let's say, over the course of the year 10, 15 times in different locations. And this brand, the guy checking you at the front desk, is unable to tell you, oh, welcome, Mr. X. I know you've been staying in that property before. I know you don't like AC in your room. Shall I bring also the same newspaper as you had last time? By the way, this is the same Wi-Fi code as the one you have in our other property, so don't worry, just connect. There are some basic technologically related elements that we're able to pull out from guest data and put it in our CRM so that we enhance the guest experience, we enhance the personalized aspect of a check-in process, and we're unable to do those basic things. So before talking about artificial intelligence and all the other interesting words today, we should get our basics right.
Yeah. So I'll bring this to you, Himank. You know, we discussed this last night. What are you doing with Emaar when it comes to capturing big data, using this data effectively, and not only using it to understand guests' needs, requirements, desires, but also driving additional revenue out of them within the hotel?
So, one of the major technological advancements that we are currently working on is capturing the data and using it to personalize guest experience. So, for example, if there's a repeat guest, through GRMS, you would know that what temperature did he set in the room or in the shower, what TV settings, what settings on the gym equipment, etc. And when the next time the guest checks in again, it automatically configures those settings and sets it as default. So this we are using as a means to enhance and personalize guest experience so that he doesn't have to fiddle it around again once he's back. The other important thing that we're working on is getting rid of the check-in and check-out counters. It'll all be seamless in future. The lobbies will be designed much more like your living rooms instead of just having people queuing up for check-in and check-out and concierge. You check into a hotel, you get into a hotel, and straight go to your room. So these are the two fundamental technologies we are working on in order to make the guest experience much better. And just carrying on where Chris left, that hospitality industry for sure has been lagging behind in adapting, or should I say, in implementing technologies which are foolproof. So we had those 2-3 years where everybody was using iPad in the room, and suddenly they started vanishing because people found that it's too cumbersome, doesn't work. Whereas if you look at other industries like Walmart, Google, Facebook, or e-retailers, those companies, when they deploy technologies, they make sure that those are up and running and seamlessly. But with hospitality, we probably tend to get a little carried away with the new technology. We get it in place for a year, doesn't work, or it's not cost effective, and then we switch to something else.
Pascal, I'm going to bring you in here as an owner, as you are developing hotels and you're partnering with international operators. How much emphasis are they placing on technology and capturing guest data when they're selling you their pitch? Is that one aspect that they focus on, or is it still very much revenue generation through their own systems and the likes?
The latter, yeah. I mean, in general, I think in general, as they said as well, it's still the hotel industry has been very conservative for a long time and lagging behind. I think one of the key issues is that many brands, I think, supposed to invest a little bit more in qualified IT people as well, because there are so many new ideas and innovations coming into the market, but you see that what's implemented in hotels is very fragmented. It's a little bit try this and try that here and there. So they need really qualified people to filter those relevant systems into the pitch that goes to the owner, so to say. Yeah. Those that are making the hotel more efficient and which are market-driven as well, the customers are waiting for.
And as you mentioned, the trial, these trial processes, they'll try this, they'll try it. That's not on their dime, that's on your money at the end of the day as an investor. So are you making sure that they're getting the right information from the start? And coming back to the point of technology, when are you actually deploying capital for technology? Is it, at what stage? Is it 6 months out from opening? Is it 12 months? Where do you see the importance of choosing the right supplier, choosing the right technology prior to the hotel opening?
That is a good point you mentioned, because we get normally the brand standards and all that about 2 years out after we've signed the contract. Now, there will be updates from the brand throughout the design stage, but once we go to the detailed design stage, we're still about 24 months out. Then a lot of the groundwork, so to say, is done. Now, the orders we place for IT systems would probably be 12 to 9 months out, so there is still scope to make some amendments, etc. But by that time, the investment by an owner is done, and then the hotel will open a year later, and probably the owner, normally most owners won't entertain another big capex injection on IT within the next 2-3 years on. That means there is a period of 4 years that there is no innovation, so to say, in the project. And that's why I think also hotels have a little bit of slower steps into new innovations.
Himank, I'll bring you in on this point here. So investment in technology, if you look at in-room technology, you go back to the sort of late 2000s, it was the big tablets that were in the room that controlled everything, and you need an engineering degree to figure out how it works. I come from a premise, if my 85-year-old grandmother can't use it, why would you have it in the room? Right. Now, as Pascal mentioned, you know, investors are putting a lot of money into this technology that would be inferior in a very short period of time. So therefore, it leads the question of why not just stripping back, particularly in-room technology, to a very minimal level and let guests use the devices they bring into the rooms. Okay, last night, I had my tablet, I was watching Netflix, but I was watching on my tablet. I couldn't connect it to the TV. Right? I hardly ever will watch a TV in the room because you're watching your own content. What are you doing with Emaar to try and focus on using or providing an adaptability for guests to use their own content rather than relying on what technology is actually invested in the room?
So you rightly pointed out that, you know, with so many gadgets in the room and guests also bringing them along with them, it doesn't make sense to keep on adding these devices in the room. So we try and keep it fairly simple. The tablets are now out of the equation. What we're now working on is a device who you can speak to. So if you want to set the room temperature, you can say, you know, Alexa, set the room temperature. It's like very much like Siri, for example, in Apple. So you can order in-room dining, or you can set the temperature, you can switch on the TV, change channels, all of that. So this is something new that we're working on, which takes away the need of adding additional gadgets to the room. And a lot of other hotel chains do it. Hotel, for example, have a policy of not keeping any gadgets, so they provide you the infrastructure, and the guest comes in with their own devices and use it.
Is Emaar adapting what you're saying, including when you said before removing check-in counters? Are you adapting this equally among an address, Vida, and Rove, or is there a different implementation to that in your hotels?
So it's in progress currently for address and Vida, but we'll see that what the actual cost is. It really make financial sense to incorporate in a 3-star brand. So all that, you know, background work is currently being done by our IT team, which will make smaller lobbies, more residential, smooth check-in and check-outs.
If you look at applications, application is a big part now of the industry, with pretty much all brands developing their own forms of apps. Rove has recently relaunched the new app. How are you using that app to actually drive additional revenues? Because it's all well and good that you can check in online, you can see your profile there, but what are you incorporating into this technology to help drive more revenues into the hotel?
Right. Yeah, I think the app is the first step. Then it needs to be taken to another level. Like we were, you know, chatting last night, and you came up with a suggestion that if there's a guest in the hotel and the app senses and sends a message that there is a promotion going on, there is happy hours in the bar, or there is some new activity going on. So all of those things need to be then integrated within the app. Now, it's very new app, so our team is developing it, incorporating more feature in order to make it more comprehensive, make it more revenue generating in the future.
Chris, what's happening in the space of Kempinski, Shaza, and Misk and this type of technology?
Kempinski has historically been conservative in adopting new technologies.
And why is that? Why is it being conservative? Is it because it is the historical, traditional luxury sense of hospitality?
Yeah, this is why I was asking Himank if Address, Rove, and Vida adapt technology in the same way, because I believe luxury cannot remove your check-in counters. You cannot make everything without a little bit of human interaction. And Kempinski believes that, you know, luxury is about human interaction. This is how service is provided. So they weren't too much jumping into that front. But I think the best example today in investing a lot in their app is Accor. And I think Bazin says, you know, I want my Accor app to be the app that when you travel, you think first about. It's not going to be Booking.com app. It's not going to be your TripAdvisor app. I want Accor to do everything for you. And this is why they've been investing in so many businesses that integrate, that have a huge technology departments with geeks from Google, etc., that are working for them to keep enhancing the app. And I think these are the most advanced investments that are happening in the hospitality is on the Accor app.
Pascal, when it comes to technology in the hotel, as you go through the development cycle, we have architects, we have designers in the rooms, we have operators sitting next to you. Each one of them will come to the table with a different idea of what type of technology is there. Do you find there are cases where you have to reel them in when it comes to the ideas that they come back and really go back to focusing on, the cost? Because the investment that you have and the return on investment, do you find that there's quite a regular part of what you're doing is to try and reel in some of these ideas and make sure that they actually give you a return on investment?
Well, yeah, I mean, sure, there are occasions where the architect and the brand and maybe another third consultant party have different views, and maybe us, we don't know the details because we are not IT specialists either. So we have to rely on, first of all, seeing what the brand has for a reason to bring the certain technologies to the table, and we bring our own experts in sometimes to give us a benchmark on that. But what we have done is, when we budget nowadays for our hotel development costs, we have slightly upped the IT component in there, because we do believe that in the end it will pay back to have some investment on that side. But as Chris said, I still think that in luxury hotels, people still need a personal touch. Although I do believe in general that also if you see at very traditional brands like Ritz-Carlton and so on, you see more and more a bit of a casual approach also there in the communication, in the service method, etc. So,
you're touching upon that point. Chris, if you look at millennial travelers, by 2020, they're going to represent 50% of the global community, global traveler market. Do you think that your approach to not investing as much in technology for the luxury brands like Kempinski is going to have a negative impact in the future?
Well, we launched 2 years ago our upscale brand, Misk by Shaza, which is here on Al Mawj. And Misk has been created to really cater to the millennials, but most importantly to the Muslim millennial travelers. Acronym is MMTs, Muslim millennial travelers. Today, if you look at the OIC countries, Muslim majority countries, 60% of the populations are below 30 years old. 60%. That's compared to 11% of the world population. So you have about 100 million Muslim millennial travelers that will be traveling within the next 5 years, spending about $100 billion on travel. They travel 2 to 5 times a year. There is a huge market of Muslim millennial travelers that need to be attended to, and this is why we created Misk, actually, to be able to be a little bit more technologically innovative than the Shaza brand, which is a bit more, and the Kempinski brand, which are a bit more on the conservative side, but create a brand that is at the same time respecting the halal needs of those millennials, because they do have various degrees of halal needs when they travel, but at the same time they want to be always connected. They want to share their stories. They want to share their experiences in hotels. You have a big rise of female millennial travelers now, Muslim millennials travelers, going around the world. You have on Instagram, you have many accounts of hijabi traveler. She's a lady from the US who goes and shows to other Muslim females, young females, where they can travel, where they can find halal-friendly facilities and hotels. So whilst most of the brands are targeting to the other millennials, we created a brand specifically for the Muslim millennials, and I think this is a huge market, a huge niche that needs to be carefully monitored, because there is a big potential in that.
Pascal, you develop dry hotels as part of your organization. When you are going and looking for brands, and trying to find partners for your properties. How much are you looking at the future that these operators are going to bring? So they're focusing on the future. Is that what you're looking at, or are you looking at still the traditional, do they have the right sales and marketing strategies? Do they have the right systems? Does a focus on the future come into your calculation of whether that brand should be used on your property or not?
Sure. I mean, definitely we won't forget the revenue optimization, of course, and the distribution channels that the brands bring. But yeah, I mean, in discussion in it, we, for example, we try to partner with some companies on certain energy-saving devices that we try to integrate into all our designs right now. And on that aspect, we have certain ideas, and we hope the brands to follow that theme with us. But yeah, of course, the discussion is always how they see the future for this market, but also how innovative they are, and the brands that we work with at the moment, they are, you know, doing well in that field. So. See, for example, we have a few hotels with Shaza. If we do another hotel with Shaza, we know already how they operate and so on. But if we would approach a new brand, yes, of course, it's for us important to see how well they are prepared for the next decade and the decades after.
Yeah. So Himank, new brands that you have that you're rolling out, Rove is a big part of it. Right. You know, very ambitious goals to try and take Rove on a regional and global level, as well as Vida and the address. Chris touched upon a point earlier, Instagram, these Instagrammable aspects. How much does that factor into the design of your hotels? About having that one signature Instagrammable piece of artwork, or having the right design elements throughout the hotel. Does that factor into the design when you are putting together brands in hotels?
Absolutely. Instagram today plays a very important factor. Meaning, even if your travel agent tells you go and stay at an XYZ hotel, if he recommends, even if you're, you know, most likely to go to Instagram or Facebook or just Google the pictures in order to select a particular hotel. And even while designing, if you see our Rove hotels, all these quirky elements, artworks, rugs, and design elements are all focused on millennials and very Instagram focused, because these are the kind of things which gravitate your attention in order to make you want to book a hotel. It's not just the architecture, it's interiors, rooms, artwork especially, is kind of ties up the entire interior design and then formulates a content which can be shared on Instagram or Facebook in order to attract people.
If I may, I'll give you two examples that's, to bounce on that we worked on. The Misk here in Al Mawj, we have the biggest portrait of Sultan Qaboos in Oman, which is carved in wood. It's a very, very heavy piece of art. And when you look on our Instagram with our hashtag, this is the most Instagrammed picture. So artwork, as you say, is so important. The second example, we're doing 2 resorts in Indonesia, one for Shaza and one for Misk. And from an architectural standpoint, we started our approach by saying, let's start with the Instagram moment. Where is going to be that architectural feature that guests, when they arrive, will want to rush to actually take a selfie and post on Instagram? So we started by this artwork, by this architectural feature. It's not an artwork, it's an architectural feature, and then develop the resorts from there. So the approach to guest experiences has really changed in the last few years.
Like in Rove, for example, we have a wall called Wall of Curiosity. So it's got multiple, pictures arranged in a particular manner with some seating in front. So that is something where people love to click, pictures with themselves against it and put on Instagram. So that creates one such element or one such area which is, creating those Instagram moments.
Yeah. Continuing with the theme of design, which we segue into quite nicely, the design is evolving. Before, hotels were very compartmentalized when it comes to the public area, so very defined lobby, defined coffee shop, defined all-day dining. These are now evolving into one common space, the work, live, play area. This has been done to create an atmosphere within the hotel to not only cater to the desires of guests, but also to try and draw in other people. The growth of common workspaces is exponential around the world. Is this focus on a pure work, live, play, common area now going to be the new standard, do you think, for particularly mid-scale and sort of economy hotels? Or do you see that also moving in towards the upscale and luxury brand hotels?
I think for the economy brands, it has been the norm for the past few years. If you see Citizen M in London, and I'll add another word to this: work, live, play, and dine. So Citizen M is one such lobby where everything flows into one another. There's no lobby practically. You walk into a library or a lounge, which flows into a dining room, then it flows into a co-working area, then it flows into a library. So everything is one space, and it does two things. Now, people attract people. A millennial would rather be at a crowded bar rather than sitting in a fine dining restaurant all by himself. So all these spaces, what they ensure is that it's always buzzing, it's always very quirky, very multifunctional. The rooms in such properties are smaller. The idea is to get you out of the room and spend more time in the public area. So it helps the guest as well as the investors, because the entire thing is becoming more and more compact. So the idea is doing more with less. So and it's not just the norm for 3-star, even the 4-star and some 5-star properties are also catching up with this. If you see the Marriott Edition in London, you walk into the lobby and you hit a bar counter even before you hit the reception desk. You've got a pool table where you can play, you've got a lounge, you've got a co-working high table, you've got a bar counter. And this entire area acts as another F&B venue. There was a time when a lot of hoteliers used to complain that people come into my lobby and have meetings all day long without even ordering a cup of coffee or water. So lobbies are, even in luxury hotels, are becoming more multifunctional. So the Edition London, for example, has that restaurant which is just off the lobby. So once you open the doors, the entire space kind of flows into each other. And they pump up the music after 6 o'clock. By 10 o'clock, it's like entering into a pub. Very buzzy, very young. So it's been the norm, and it will for sure continue.
Pascal, bringing you into this, this is also an important part from an investment perspective. Every square meter that you build needs to be able to generate some form of revenue and give you a return on investment. In your new hotels, are you looking at this type of design aspect where you are creating multi-use areas, particularly in the common areas?
Definitely, and we highly support it because we believe that the socially interactive common areas will drive more revenues to the facilities in that area. And most importantly, it's what the market demands, what the generation now wants. So it will attract, therefore, more people there. So we see in Europe, in a lot of bigger cities, you see the room size is also getting actually smaller and smaller, and the guest playing field basically being more in those common areas. So I don't know if that's something that would particularly work here nowadays, but see that trend in Europe and US at least.
And another area that of facilities that are getting are adapting nowadays is the number of food and beverage outlets. We traditionally always had all-day dining, a couple of specialty restaurants, maybe a bar, a coffee shop, sometimes even 3 or 4 specialty restaurants. But at the end of the day, the revenue per square meter of those spaces and the profit conversions are a lot lower compared to traditional rooms. And with more hotels coming through, the competitiveness is getting stronger and stronger. We've got a supplier in the audience here that does food trucks. Is it time to say, let's get rid of these restaurants and maybe have just one all-day dining and a lounge and have a food truck outside? Is it time to really start thinking completely differently to the food and beverage space?
We definitely have less already in certain hotels that have been designed that we're going to start construction soon. Some of them only have all-day dining and some bank meeting facilities and room service, of course. And we have certain outlets outsourced already because there are specialist restaurant operators in the market. And the hotel can focus most on its core business, highest profit areas of the rooms. And also some of the brands we discussed with some projects we are starting soon with Eppink and Accor. They also welcome the idea because we were in very highly visible areas that certain of the restaurants are outsourced and they maintain the key outlets, so to say. Yeah.
Another aspect of design and facilities is leisure, you know, gyms, swimming pools, etc. You know, there was a big emphasis many, many years ago, and then really the focus on the health club really did diminish in hotels. But now there's a resurgence. Everybody is really focused on healthy living, trying to improve their well-being. Himank, are you seeing a greater emphasis back on these health clubs, having the right technology in the gyms and having the right facilities? Is that really what you're bringing into your designs and as part of your health clubs?
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to the transition from luxury to experience, what I mentioned earlier, one of the major trends has been over the years for wellness. And people are very conscious these days for having a therapy or a treatment or the gym. So all these facilities are for sure much more important today than they have ever been. So we try and include pretty expansive facilities when it comes to resort, pretty, a gym with a nice view, with a whole lot of range of equipment to cater to every kind of guest needs. And then spa facilities will have all the common areas and treatment rooms, sauna and steam, etc. When it comes to business hotels, considering the fact that there are fewer people using these facilities, but still they are incorporated with the same emphasis on them, even though they are smaller, in order to cater to every kind of guest needs. And wellness, for sure, in the future is going to be much more important than what it is today. And what I mentioned during my talk about Hilton integrating a small gym within the room just goes to show that how important it is. If somebody like yourself or Chris, you travel quite a lot, and having a gym within the room makes so much of big difference, at least to certain customers. You can pay a premium in order to stay in a room where you don't have to wake up early morning and go to the gym. So wellness and health for sure is going to matter much more in future. And just coming back to the point that Pascal was making about the F&B, I think the concept of all-day dining is completely misplaced. The all-day dining restaurants are designed to take care of the needs for breakfast. So you have to meet a certain number, you lay out the buffet, and it's like cattle feeding every morning. An all-day dining restaurant in any hotel is the last F&B outlet that one would like to go to. They're always boring, they are always massive, with only 20–30% filled up during lunches and dinners. So something needs to be done to activate that space and make it as revenue generating and as attractive as the specialty restaurants. Now, a lot of chains also do, what they do is they incorporate a breakfast room. So instead of calling it an all-day dining restaurant, it's just simply a breakfast room. You lay out the buffet, have food, and then you have your specialty restaurant, which are your major drivers of revenues during lunch and dinners.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to comment on that. That's actually why I think in a hotel it could work very well for a brand to just have an all-day dining restaurant, but not to position it as an all-day dining restaurant, because if the hotel would operate that one restaurant, surely they would be innovative to make sure that there is something going on in lunch and dinner to have the restaurant lively on the 3 meals, while the other outlets which are being outsourced have their own management to try to get the business in.
Yeah, what we're doing basically is that we're creating concepts where for breakfast it is what an all-day dining looks like, with your buffet being laid out. And then for lunch and dinner, these outlets turn into specialty restaurant where you order a la carte, have some flexibility in the way you divide those rooms, have flexibility in the way the design changes with the mood, with the lights, with the FF&E. So you have to find innovative way to make sure that your ADD is not dead at dinner, especially. Lunch, you can always fill it up with the mice market. You have groups coming in. They need to have lunch. You organize, you know, a set menu, and you put them in the all-day dining. You have a buffet. It's convenient. But these are definitely not outlet where the next generation want to go to. Millennials don't go to ADDs for lunch and dinner. Actually, because they want to experience the local, the local F&B culinary scene and experiences, they tend to actually spend most of the day outside of the hotel. They don't want to eat in your hotel. How do you make them actually at least spend one of the meals in the hotel? How do you keep innovating in terms of the food concepts that you bring? And this is where food trucks are coming into place. We're putting food trucks in one of our all-day dinings that you can keep changing because you can bring, you know, new cuisines every time instead of laying out into this, you know, chef that is trying to cook live in front of you, and then the ventilation system doesn't work, then it smells in the lobby. I mean, this is what we used to do in the 90s and early 2000s. I think hotels are evolving now to new concepts.
And I think touching upon this point is that, you know, you talked about how are you going to try and keep guests to stay within the hotel. Well, there's another question. How do you bring outside guests into your hotel and utilize your outlets? And one thing that I've noticed with Rove is within your all-day dining and right next to it, you have a common workplace area where you actually sell memberships, where you can pay a monthly fee, you have unlimited coffee, free Wi-Fi, and you can work in that area, and you can enjoy the buzz, you can bring people in, and you can have conversations and have meetings. Do you see that a new trend within the industry, except for Rove, maybe with you, Chris, and Shaza and Misk, is to incorporate these common workplaces into these all-day dinings and try and cater to the growth of entrepreneurs, particularly in this region, which is growing exponentially?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest brands that has been launched recently is Rove. And Rove has really broken the mold in what hotels, especially mid-scale hotels, 3-star hotels, look like in this region. If you look at historically the 3-star hotels in the GCC, you see the building from outside and you just want to run. Rove brought something that is super edgy, super cool, targeted to the millennials, where you have, you know, you can play PlayStation in the lobby, sitting on beanbags, read a book. You have a Zoom market within the lobby. Everything is so alive and so well designed that now I know some other brands that have suddenly rebranded and adapted their identity, including the new Golden Tulip brand, to actually replicate this type of experience at an upscale level. So really, Rove has changed the way we think about 3-star hotels, and I think many brands are following that trend as well here in the region.
You know, you talked about Citizen Air, and we've got other brands, Rove, we've got some other global economy hours, 25 hours, etc., that are creating more disruption based on their segments. Are you seeing more sort of upscale and luxury hotels incorporating these elements into their own design and their service element as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you see, when it comes to design, luxury hotels have always played very safe. So, you know, the design elements that they'll incorporate and the fit and finish, the furniture, the artwork, everything is kind of playing very safe. With a mid-scale brand, what happens is that you tend to experiment. So in Rove, for example, you've got all those quirky elements which were never seen before, like you have the meeting room table could double up as a ping pong table, for example. You could play ping pong during the meetings. You have a little golf play area in the meeting rooms. You've got a PlayStation. You've got a luggage area which is self-accessible instead of a staff going in and putting the luggage for you. You've got the wall of curiosity. You've got a self-help bar counter. So all these quirky little things will gradually, in some form, will definitely creep into the luxury hotels as well. and will make them more informal. So historically, what's been happening is that luxury hotels, clientele have been more 50 years and plus. So the client is like somebody who can spend that kind of money were only people 50 and above, but because people in those days used to save a lot. With our generation, what's happening is that people have got more disposable income to spend in luxury hotels. So that is the main key driving factor, which is going to make the luxury hotels more informal in future as compared to any other hotel
but
that we previously.
Is that happening now? Are luxury hotels responding to it? Because when I still look at a lot of these luxury brands, they're still back from the 70s and 80s. They're catering to the baby boomers. They're catering to the older generation. I don't see them responding quick enough. And do you think that in 5 years' time, they're even going to be able to catch up to where we are now when it comes to these evolutions in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. They'll have to. So the figures that I put up for Airbnb, for example, people have started to choose alternate accommodation options in order to get more authentic experience and local feel.
But also price was a point. You know, the slide that you put up when you talked about authentic experiences and you're looking at something of a unique offering, still 55% of the people's motivations for choosing Airbnb is price. So is that still an element to factor in? Because price is, affordability is still something everybody looks at.
No, you're 100% right, but the other day I read an article which busts this myth that Airbnb accommodation is actually cheaper. In most cases, it's not. So if you go and try and book online in Airbnb accommodation, it probably will be higher, if not cheaper, as compared to any hotel. So the future of luxury hospitality, for sure, is to integrate all these elements to make it more informal. For example, many hotel chains like Marriott, they've started tying up with Michelin star chefs for cooking classes, or National Geographic photographers for photography classes, or local artisans for art classes, etc. So all these things have gradually started happening, but they've been much slower to adapt as compared to the mid-scale brands.
I think if you look at Global Hotel Alliance, which Kempinski and Shaza is part of, especially with their Discovery membership, you incorporate some of these free experiences with every stay. So it's not just points you get, it's also you can experience one of these local experiences, can't you?
Yeah, the loyalty program of this alliance has about 550 hotels across 32, 34 brands. Was actually, the program won many awards because it was the first award that actually, instead of getting points to exchange them to silly things, you actually exchange them to experience something local, authentic, that you as a tourist would not have been able to do without some wasta or connection in the market, and it's something that money cannot buy. Visiting a secret room in the palace or doing something like that. So more and more guests, and especially that new generation, want to experience something locally authentic, and we're trying to do that with that program.
All right, well, I've got a screen here telling me time's up, but I want to do one thing. I want to ask each one of you to outline what you think is going to be the next disruptive thing in our industry. I know it's hard to look into the crystal ball, but what do you think is going to be the next change with the industry? I'll start with you, Pascal.
I think if the brands that we just talked about, if they manage well to integrate the authentic services and experiences in the destination and communicate them well to the customers, I think that would be a big step for those brands to move forward.
For me, it's a double-edged sword disruptor, which is going to be artificial intelligence. And this is going to be a scary shift for the industry, which has been so conservative and people-oriented in the past. And suddenly we're shifting into talking to robots and machines. So, and it's coming really fast.
Yeah, for me, there are two disruptors. One, which Chris mentioned, that in future, it'll even be hard to find a human being when you get into a hotel. You'll have robots everywhere. You'll have robots cleaning your room and interacting with them. That's really scary, especially for luxury hotels, where personalization or personal interaction is so very important. The second disruptive thing which I see happening is in the mid-scale and economy brands, where the focus will be to get more multifunctional spaces. So for example, the room, even if it's a 15 square meter room, will be much more multifunctional than it's ever have been. For example, the wall could be just a paneling, you press a button, the beds come down, and the entire space is there for you to utilize during the day, because you only sleep on the bed during night. So you retract the bed and you use the entire space. So for example, like these, you can have a desk coming out of the wall, multifunctional spaces which can be turned around within hours or maybe minutes.
Okay. Well, this discussion could go on for a lot longer, but unfortunately time is up. So first of all, do we have any questions from the audience before we move on about some of the points that we've discussed this morning? We've got one gentleman in the back there who's got a microphone.
Hello, Stan. I understand you were talking about the food truck, the new concept that you were discussing about. In the neighboring country, UAE, it become very popular, and most of the star hotels are coming out with the food truck concepts. How user-friendly are in Oman? Are these being approved from the municipality? How we can go forward?
The biggest challenge in the UAE was about licensing with the municipality, and at some point there was only 1 or 2 people controlling those licenses, and then it was decentralized, and then it became super popular. But maybe you know a little bit more for the Oman situation about how to get those licenses, but this is the key.
I know, and it is a bit complicated, yes, I know, and I don't know the details of it, but it's definitely something that we'd like to work with Shaza team on to make it happen for here also.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Nice to meet you today. My question for Mr. Pascal. You have mentioned that room size in Europe is smaller and going to be smaller and smaller. And I want to ask you about the classification criteria here in Oman regarding the room sizes, which is starting minimum from 16 square meter as 1-star hotel to 27 square meter for 5-star. Of course, without the toilet size and entrance size. So what do you think about this criteria here in Oman?
Well, first of all, as I know, there has been a review at the moment. Some of the criteria, I think they're a little bit rigid in Oman because the criteria directly relate to development cost as well, right? So if we have to build a certain area of square meters, it's going to increase our development cost, obviously. But I do understand that there has to be a kind of a minimum requirement for a 4-star or a 5-star. What exactly is the square meters? I mean, that's can always be debated, but I think, yes, my opinion, right now the classification is a bit rigid, but I know that it's being reviewed and being changed soon, so we're looking forward to the new classification.
The classification hasn't really evolved anywhere in the world, and it's still adopting a very old system which is no longer relevant today. You can't say that the Burj Al Arab is 5-star and another upper upscale hotel with 36 square meter room is also 5-star. Brands are defined by their scale: budget, mid-scale, upscale, upper upscale, luxury. These are scale, and you can see a clear distinctions. But the star rating of the building, of the hotel itself, doesn't really reflect anymore the experiences and the brand identity and what they want to offer. And there is a big gap between what the authorities are imposing in terms of star rating and what the guests are looking for in terms of amenities, facilities, sizes of rooms, and what the brands are offering. And this is one of the major challenges that really not many people are addressing, unfortunately.
One more question at the front.
Well, Chris, just what you said there, you're right. There is a big difference between the star ratings and the others. Why isn't the industry, and particularly the brands, trying to do more to harmonize those so that the customer really knows what they're buying?
I think in the region, historically, the government has been, we set the rules and you guys follow and no one says anything. And now we're seeing from the hospitality industry, more and more brands, we have owners coming together. We saw recently in Dubai with the Marriott situation. And I think brands really should come together and present a case to the government so that, as a regional standards at least, because you can't do it on a worldwide basis, but let's take a GCC approach. We should actually work together to try to come up with solutions that reflect the brands that we are building today for the future. And we're not doing it. Why? It's beyond my understanding, but you're right. We should be doing something about it.
One more question up the front. It's great, lots of questions today.
How do you think you can balance between the human factor and the technology factor, knowing that the technology is very amazing, it's going very fast, and the day will come where there will be hotels fully operated by the technology?
I'll jump in on this one. I think at the end of the day, we're part of the services industry. We're not part of the technology industry. And there has to be a balance between the two of them. People stay in hotels, people travel the world because they want some form of connection with people. And nowadays, people are traveling more and more when it comes to, and the reason for is to connect with different parts of the world. I think hotels, and what we see from the advisory perspective, is that there are a number of hotels that have decided to go down that route where they become very technology focused and they invest heavily in this type of element where you have robots that will serve aspects within the room and they'll look after you. But I think at the end of the day, we're a human industry. It's a human connected industry. And I think that there does need to be a balance of making sure that, at the end of the day, if technology fails and there is a catastrophic failure of technology, are there still humans to back everything up? And there's still people there to be able to provide those basic needs and requirements that guests effectively need when they stay within the hotels. I don't know if any of you three want to add into that. One more up the front here.
My question is about Airbnb. So from your experience, what's the definition of the Airbnb? Do you think it should be a licensed accommodation from the government? Is it a villa, just villa or home, then transfer it to the official accommodation as a hotel? Or what's actually from your experience, the official definition of the Airbnb?
The official definition is that it's home away from home. So if you're an owner, you can rent your apartment through Airbnb. Just like Airbnb, you've got many other companies as well operating. Accor recently bought over One Fine Stay, which operates in the luxury segment. Licensing issues definitely have been there. In a lot of countries, Airbnb have been facing licensing issues. But it's an alternate accommodation, basically. But for those people who want exclusivity, who want privacy, they can rent an entire villa or a room. That's basically what it is. But licensing issue, for sure, it needs to be sorted out. The same happened with Uber in some countries. So that's something which the government agencies will need to work out for future, because this space is also getting crowded day by day with a lot of new companies jumping into this alternate accommodation business.
Just to touch upon that, there are a number of governments within the region that are starting to regulate Airbnb and the whole private letting sector. A lot of that is to do with not only safety and security measures, but also protection for guests and property owners, because there has to be some form of control and make sure there's guarantees when it comes to making sure the property is also looked after, and if property is damaged, if what's the retribution. Also from a safety and security, that you know who's going to be staying in there, and maintaining some security measures within the building that you're in. If you look at the profile of people who are staying within Airbnbs, it is very much an independent style guest that has stayed in there. They want to be more connected with the community, and they aren't necessarily the same as the guests that you get staying in hotels. That's going to continue, and you go back to 20, 30 years ago of small little B&Bs that you had throughout the world, where people go and stay there for 1 night, 2 nights, wherever it may be. But this industry is going to continue to grow with Airbnb, and with the growth that they're seeing across the world. It's here to stay, but I think, as you mentioned, there needs to be some form of, I wouldn't say over-regulation, but some form of protection in there for both property owners and for guests that are going to come in there, whether it is, registration of both property and guests, whatever it may be. But there would need to be something in there to just have some form of regulation.
That is time, gentlemen. So maybe you'd like to quick wrap up. Christopher, you'd like to quickly wrap up the discussion, and then maybe...
Yeah, well, just wrapping up, the industry is going through a lot of change. The world is going through a lot of change, and a lot of that is driven by the growth of technology. Technology is something that is growing exponentially. Across the world, we're starting to see the emergence of the sharing economy, which is having an impact on all different industries, the hotel industry included. Technology is also driving guests' needs, driving changes in the guest needs, requirements. And I think as an industry which the hospitality falls into, which has always been a very traditional brick and mortar, simplified type of product, the industry needs to try and keep up with these changes. And I think from the discussion that we've had today, hotels are starting to realize that they do need to catch up. They do need to invest in these types of new design, new technology, new service levels to try and match the current needs and also the future needs that guests require within the sector. So thank you all. I appreciate your participation today. So just a round of applause for our 3 panelists here this morning.
Gentlemen, thank you all once again for your participation and sharing with your immense knowledge with us this morning. And for the last 1 hour or so, we've been talking about innovation and enhancing guest user experience. And it's quite apt for us to invite our silver partner, Intrel, to please come on the stage and hand over a memento from our side as a token of appreciation. I'd like to welcome Mr. Neeraj Nadkarni, who is the Regional Director of the Middle East region of Intrel. Intrel is an award-winning organization that has been recently awarded several times for their innovative guest room automation solutions, energy management solutions, water management solutions, and very interestingly, all of their panels are fitted with a unique and innovative, if I may use the word, Bluetooth beacons. And if you'd like to know more about it, please do check out the Intrel solutions that are available on table number 1 and 2. But Mr. Neeraj, could you please come on the stage and hand over a small memento to our panelists? Christopher Hewett, our panel discussion moderator. Mr. Pascal. That was for Chris, and finally for Mr. Himank Goswami from the Emaar Hospitality Group. And maybe one for the camera. Thank you, gentlemen.